Okay, we're here with Nicole and Bryson. Okay, nice meeting you guys. My name is Gard Soshai from the Think and Say podcast, and this is Clyde Hyder. How long have you been in a relationship?
About a year and 2 months.
A year and a couple months.
Which one?
A
I'm
year.
messing with you. You say year and 2 months. I'm just messing with you, right?
Understood.
So, who decided to make the first move?
I did, for sure. I found her, I came across her Instagram account, and I really liked what I saw as far as like the personality she had and the things that she was interested in. And we had a matching tattoo already, and this tattoo to me is really meaningful. And so I felt that it was something there, something special. And so I decided to reach out, and we kind of hit it off. And then what ended up happening is we ran into each other face to face at an event. And it was completely random, never expected it to happen, but we just kind of ran into each other very randomly, and from that point I felt like it was meant to be. So
Hey, this is a great coincidence. So you said a couple of things that caught my attention. You guys had a matching tattoo before you ever met, and then coincidentally you were at an event and you met in person. And for that, you think you guys were meant to be. I'll let you answer this one question.
It definitely wasn't. We ran into each other and we were like, oh my God, this is my soulmate. But I definitely think it was a sequence of events, little by little, signs and just like similarities, synchronicities of just getting along, connecting, and sometimes you have that deeper feeling with someone that you just know. You can't explain it to someone, but only you feel it, you know?
Okay, I'm gonna ask a couple of tricky questions here. Okay, there is feminism and femininity, right? Now, for you, I'm gonna ask this question about her. Is she feminine or is she a feminist?
I'd say a little bit of both. She's a very feminine woman, but she has some feminist perspectives in the way that she feels the ancestral patriarchy of our society kind of like bleeding into the way she feels as a woman and how she's seen women be treated. And so I would say she has some feminist perspectives, but at the same time, she's a very feminine, like, wants to be a traditional woman, but she's seen a lot of broken parts of society.
Society in a whole is broken. So hence, there are going to be broken parts of society. It's just the part of course of nature, right? That's part of course of nature. So, for him, what made you decide that you were going to date him?
I think from the beginning, it was probably his emotional depth, his ability to be real and just vulnerable and talk about real things, real shit that people deal with in the world. He's not very egotistical. He's a real holistic man in terms of like, he feels everything that we do and he sympathizes with it a bit. And like from the beginning, he's really just like been very understanding, very open, and just real overall, like a real motherfucker, you know?
What do you mean when you say that he feels everything that we do? When you say we, are you talking about both of you or woman?
I think both of us, really, because like men and women both grow through their same feelings and both go through their same issues, and like our ability to come to each other as transparent and real as possible and kind of like deal with issues and deal with hard conversations just in full transparency and full vulnerability shows that he's not just like, he doesn't take me, he takes me seriously, you know? He considers everything I says, takes it into account, kind of thinks about it, and like tries to implement it in ways, and also like gives me perspectives and gives me real ideas that help me change as a woman and kind of restructure my mind in the way that I see society and the way that I see men.
So what I'm hearing is that you are easygoing, you're not defensive, you take what he says and you...
I definitely can be, I can be defensive, but this is what I mean by being real. Whenever I do get defensive, it's not like all the time he gets defensive as well and triggered and doesn't even want to hear me out. Like, he's very interested in understanding my perspective and gives me his perspective very well rounded. And before being partners, before being in a relationship, we're really just friends first. And so I try to see him from the perspective of being a man in this world, and he tries to see me and being the perspective of a woman in this world. And it's not so much competition, but more so like a journey to understanding the issues that we all deal with.
So in terms, you said a very good word, competition. What we've noticed is that men and women in relationship, they're usually competing against each other.
Yeah.
Woman is competing against the man to be just like the man, and man is trying to keep the woman in check.
Yep.
And that causes issue in the relationship. Now, from your perspective, how do you feel about what I just asked?
I can agree. There are most definitely aspects of that, especially in like the majority of relationships. More specifically in our relationship, there is like, I guess, a slight bit of competitiveness in the sense of like we want to be the best version of ourselves. And so sometimes when we're not very conscious about what we're doing, we can kind of like become, I want to say, a little arrogant and like, oh, I gotta be like the big man, I gotta be the lawgiver, I gotta be like, you know, the one doing all the right things all the right times, and I gotta be like making sure you're doing what I want you to do. And so some of those aspects can come out of me, but when they do and I go a little too far, when I say things a little too aggressively, she checks me and she's like, yo, like I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. I don't appreciate like how aggressive you're being at the moment. And so when I realize that I'm doing that, I'm like, oh shit, I'm sorry. Like I was just caught up in the moment. I was very passionate in the moment, and I didn't mean to like hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to like press you or anything like that. And the same kind of goes on her end as well. Like she can be competitive in the sense of like she needs to keep up, and she needs to keep up with like my attention. So she needs to always like make sure she has my attention at all times. So if we're out in an event and she sees me maybe looking at someone a little bit too longer than I should have, then she kind of gets upset, and then she has to maybe kind of draw a little bit more attention to herself. So she realizes, so she makes me realize that like I may be paying attention to the wrong things. So there is a little bit of competitive in the sense of like we're trying to keep each other here, centered between each other. And so I'd say that would be the competitive aspect.
Okay, so in relationship, the man is always expected to be the protector and provider. What's your take? And I have another part which I'm going to ask you.
I mean, in just terms of biological abilities, men are the protectors. Like, if I were to walk around saying, like, I'm gonna protect my man, like, there's only a level of realism to it of, like, what I can actually do to protect him, you know? And I think my real protection comes from, like, my consciousness and what I realize may be, like, pulling him in or maybe tempting him. And instead of maybe considering myself as a protector, I can consider myself as just like his ground, his rock. I pull him back in, you know? I let him protect me, I let him lead, but like I pull him in. I pull him into the ground, I pull him into like humility, I pull him into integrity and showing like my own vulnerability and his big responsibility of protecting not only me physically, but mentally and emotionally.
Okay, so this question I was gonna ask you, but she said something that's I'm going to use to tie the both in together, right? So in a relationship, what I've noticed that causes confusion in a relationship is that two people, rather than them working together in unison, they tend to work independently, which causes strife and division in the relationship. So as a couple, working together would be more beneficial than working independently. Now, as a couple, have you found that each of you have been working independently rather than interdependent?
So, it's a very, very good question. And my take on it is our goal is to work together in unison and with synergy as much as we possibly can. But coming into a relationship, you realize that it's not as easy as it sounds. We both come into the relationship with our own personal problems, with our own personal traumas, with our own personal past that sometimes we don't even realize how it affects us, especially once we get into a relationship. And so the question of if we work in unison or if we work individually, I'd say the goal is to work in unison as a team, but there have been times where, especially early in the relationship, where we have kind of, not intentionally, but have worked independently because we get upset at each other and we're like, I don't like this, so I need to go work on myself and I need to go be myself and focus on myself and I need to go handle my feelings and my problems somewhere else instead of with you. And it can create this individualism that is unhealthy in the aspect or in the context of a relationship. And my perspective is like, it's incredibly, incredibly vital to work as a team in a relationship. So like, for example, when we have an issue, when we have a disagreement, when we have a problem, for me, it's so incredibly important that she communicates that with me and we solve it right then and there. When she's triggered or upset or uncomfortable, she comes to me and she says, hey, I'm upset, I'm uncomfortable with X, Y, and Z. I need you to communicate that with me so that I can understand what you're feeling, why you're feeling that, and what I can do differently to nurture you and make you more comfortable. And if you don't tell me that, and if you just go off on your own like, fuck him, I don't want to deal with this, and you just go be yourself individually, we're not working as a team. We're not working together. And so if we're on the same team, that means we're working towards the same goal together in unison. And the only way to do that is if we're clearly communicating with each other and understanding each other's problems and perspectives and just having compassion and empathy for just being human, you know? Because in a relationship, especially in a new one, it's easy to think that like you're supposed to be perfect. Like why do you have problems? Why did you do that? Why did you do this? Why weren't you perfect in that situation? It's like, it's easy to assume that and expect that, but it's really, really, really hard to practice that. And the way you get better at it is by communicating that completely clearly and transparent at every single point in time.
All right. So your take on the question I asked in terms of working together or working as an individual?
The biggest thing that has transformed our relationship is you are never at war with your partner. You're at war together against whatever approaches you, no matter how much it triggers you.
That's a great response. That's a great response. Now, in terms of you together, when he says to you, I don't like something, and she says to you, I don't like something, you already explained. What triggers you in the relationship when he says something in the relationship? What triggers you? What's your biggest pet peeve in the relationship?
I guess contradiction. Like,
give an example.
You can be honest.
I think prior to meeting him, and I guess like maybe with my outfit and the way I'm expressing myself right now, I was very out there. And like, I think society can really mold women in that way, in the sense of how they get attention and how they're most valued is like very physically and very sexually. And so I've kind of created like this idea that my worth and my like the way that I can get the most attention is through being like a very sexual, out there type of being. And like, unfortunately, that's what kind of reeled him in. But through being with me, he's kind of realized that that's not what he wants. That's not what makes him look like a respectable man. But what can be triggering is what a lot of the time pulls men in is women like me that are very out there, that are very sexual, that are very open and very tempting. And so being that for my man and him telling me like, yo, you gotta let that go, you gotta stop expressing yourself this way, like it's embarrassing, it's not like the most respective to my nature, but then like seeing the things that he may fall into, the things that may catch his attention is like, why can't I be that for you? If that's like low-key your deepest desire, why don't you just let me be that for you?
Okay, so is sexuality a part of your essence, who you are, or is femininity a part of your essence and who you are?
So this is actually a huge thing that I've really been learning right now. Like, when you talk about healing your inner trauma and your inner child, a lot of the time they say that you might shed 80 to 90% of your personality. And so I feel that maybe my hypersexuality and my insistence on being a sexual being has maybe been from society molding that. And so like my fight back to not being able to be sexy or like completely out there has come from this want to be the type of women that a lot of men are falling into. Like, you go on OnlyFans or you go on social media right now, a lot of the women that get the most attention or like the most, I guess you could say, love comes from like that image, you know? Like,
Is that a muse for you?
it's not amusing, it's kind of sad when you realize that like who's really benefiting from you giving into that? Who's benefiting from you giving into the deepest desires of men? Men. And that's what's wrong with femininity today. It's like you think that you're being a feminist, but you're only stroking men's like deepest desires and deepest instincts. And so to be a challenging special woman is to walk around like, and even today I guess you could say I challenge that, but at the end of the day I was born and raised in Miami. Like, it's still a part of me, like being able to be free, being able to be out there. But like the whole point of women being kind of molded in this sensitive being type of way, she needs to be a respectable woman, is because men kind of have the tendency, unfortunately, because of industries like porn that have made them really objectify women. Like, they may watch porn right when they wake up, so when they go into the world they look at women like that, like at objects and stuff.
One sec. Now, this is very important question I'm going to ask you. Who objectifies a woman? A woman or a man objectifies a woman?
I mean, I'll answer this to you right now. I could be wearing a long hoodie, long sweatpants, and my little face could be out, and men will still dream and fantasize and wonder what's under that. And I think the more covered up you are, the more of a fun mystery there is to it. I don't think you'll ever take away the intention of like really dreaming about and fantasizing a woman, because unfortunately that comes from society and the way that they see women. Women are fuck objects because of porn and because of industries like that. Because when you go onto your social media nowadays, like, women are just objects, and like the way that we present ourselves sometimes can accentuate that.
So wouldn't you say that women objectify themselves, right, first, before a man has the opportunity to objectify them as a sex object?
I mean, you can bring it back to the old times, you know? Like, women completely covered up, completely like reserved and very conservative. Men were still kind of promiscuous in their ways of thinking, because they still kind of craved, like, maybe back then it was like an escort or a stripper or like Playboy magazines. Like that desire for like what's behind a woman when she's covered up will always be there. So no matter what you're wearing, you're always going to be sexualized, because that's the biological nature of men. I think that can be shifted, but in the society that we're in and the ways that men grow up and the habits that they acquire, it's kind of like inevitable for them to objectify women, whatever they're wearing.
Let's talk about the wild. Let's put us as men in the wild, in the jungle, with the lion, the wolves, the tigers, the bears, the elephants, the males counterpart in the wild. Would you say that a male counterpart,
the manly animalistic nature of being human, and that comes with being a woman as well, but I think that you're gifted with feelings and compassion and sympathy as a human, and you can control that to a certain extent. And I think that like things like religion and becoming closer to God or becoming closer to something that helps keep you in check beyond your woman is something that can help you tame that, because unfortunately we are animals, and that's going to be something that's in our nature, but we're also not animals. What differentiates us from a lion? Our ability to contemplate and our ability to sympathize and feel compassion. A male lion will feed on his own cubs. Men, humans, don't do that.
all right, let's back up just a second. The question I asked is, aren't we the same in any species as male? We're sexual beings, we're visual beings. we're going to see the female and we're going to want what we see. But as a human, the woman should cover up to help make sure that the man
Yes.
can't just visually objectify her.
Yes.
So, with that question, would you say that women objectify themselves first instead of men objectifying themselves?
Are completely, like, all their attention is taken away and they become completely weak to the type of women that they're telling us not to be. You can't blame us for wanting to be that for them, because it's not coming out of a way of like, oh, I just want to objectify myself and be a man. No, I want to please my man. And if low-key I feel like that's what pleases him, then like I want to be that, you know? And so it's a level of balancing on both sides.
Okay, as male and female in a relationship, you are both a representation of each other. So if you go somewhere by yourself, you're representing him. And if he goes somewhere by himself, he's representing you. So as a couple, you're representing each other. This question is for you. How would you feel if you wanted her to stop dress the way she dresses and she says no?
So we have this conversation fairly often. So my take on it is that, like, I think there is a way to respect your partner. There's a way to respect your man, especially when you're out alone or with like a group of friends and you're going out to like a club, for example, or a party or an event. The way I see it is like, I believe in being feminine. I believe in expressing yourself. I'm also an artist, so I understand the, you know, like with her butt out or, you know, wearing a bathing suit or wherever at like an event or a club when everyone's drinking and pretty much everyone there is in the mindset of like, I want to get laid or I want to dance or I want to have fun with someone and not really think about the consequences. That can make me uncomfortable. And so the way I do feel comfortable is like her dressing in a way that like respects me, to where it doesn't give every person in there the opportunity to see her the way I see her in our most intimate moments. So I don't exactly remember your initial question, but that's where I'm at so far. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it there, but one last question. Is cheating physical or emotional? For both of you.
Okay, this is a very interesting question, and I have a lot of information on it. The way I see it is like, it can be a little bit of both. There's a form of cheating, that's adultery. And so in that aspect, yes. But at the same time, if someone's walking by the street and I just happen to glance at her because she's right in front of me, it's not really my fault. But once I realize like, oh, that's a good looking woman and like I shouldn't be staring at her, I look the other way. And so in that sense, like, you can't really blame me. And so I would say cheating is majority physical, but there's also a large aspect of it that can be mental, especially if it's disrespecting the other person in your mind.
Okay, lastly, is cheating physical or emotional?
Both. I mean, like, what you do in your own time also speaks a lot about where you are mentally and emotionally. So if you're on your own, if you only respect your women when you're with her, you already committed it emotionally. So like, it makes no difference doing it physically. It makes no difference actually doing it because you already did it and satisfied yourself. And especially if you use different avenues that give you the ability to connect intimately, even if it's not physically, but intimately and emotionally with a woman in your own time, is also a form of cheating. Because like, if the tables were flipped and women had a tendency to not be able to control themselves to a sight of a man, and when they're in their own time, they spend like hours or every morning, every night, or different times of the day staring at different men, sexualizing themselves and pleasing themselves to that man, like, I promise you the man would not like that.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to continue this conversation in the Think and Say podcast studio, because it seems like you guys have a lot to say, right? So thank you